So what I've been told is that a lot of what's going on is that the governments of the world have an intention of creating a one world government by faking an alien invasion, essentially, or alien contact, something like that. I honestly think that that is something that would be hard to make without seeming fake, or also something you would call that's cliche that the public wouldn't necessarily believe. Part of the reason is that a lot of like our ancient hieroglyphs and petroglyphs and stuff like that have already told us that we've been in contact. And what most people don't know is that if you look at the three pyramids of Giza, their size and the distance from each other are an exact model representation of the size of the stars and distance between the stars of Orion's belt, which is a constellation. Orion's belt, everyone knows who Orion is. He's a tall man with shooting an arrow, right? And so Orion's belt is 3 stars, and they're all represented in in the pyramids of Giza, and that is where that particular location had been visited by those particular aliens. We've been visited by more than a couple different species from throughout our galaxy. I'll just tell you that right now, and I know that with absolute certainty. I don't even have to ask. There's no question there, and history has already explained that. You can look at a lot of our ancient civilizations and things that you would you would see that would surprise you. Another thing is that I think it's the Atacamas, somewhere in South America, they have what are called crystal skulls. They also have perfectly round orbs of stone that are almost impossible to recreate today. They're like perfect spheres, and they're like 3 feet, 4 feet in diameter, done in ancient times. But there's these crystal skulls, okay, that are very interesting. And these crystal skulls, some of them are oblong head shape, and the whole reason why a lot of the royalty in Egypt had worn headdresses was because the back of their heads were oblong. They kind of stuck out a little bit, and they weren't what you would call entirely human. You know, they had larger skull capacity, larger space for their gray matter, for their brain, and that came out the back of their head. And I'm going to be honest with you straight up. I have a family member, a relative of mine, and she cuts her hair in a specific way to actually hide that. She has a little bit of an oblong head on the back of her head. Not enough to really stand out. People wouldn't necessarily recognize it right off the bat, but that's part of my family. The reason I don't show my face or my head is because I've got what you would say prominent features. I've got large eyes, large nose, and my skull is a lot larger than what you would see on most people. It's actually one of the reasons why I had difficulty being birthed. My mom had a real hard time giving birth to me, and I was an extra large child, and part of that reason was the size of my skull. And you can still see that to this day. You can look at me, you can see the size of my skull, and every now and then someone will look at me and kind of be a little surprised, probably because I don't look like your average human being, and that's because I'm not. And the way that I see things is that people have the inherent it's kind of like a defense mechanism to fear what we don't understand, what we don't know. But I can tell you right now that the mentality of human beings, us having a command and conquer mentality, because we've essentially conquered the elements around us. We've conquered the earth and all the difficulties and challenges that have arisen as we've advanced civilization to become more self-sufficient, more generally efficient, for us to have better standards of living. It's kind of permeated over into any type of futuristic thought process, being something along the lines of first contact or running into another alien species. which is kind of funny because if any alien species does visit us, we better hope that they're peaceful and benign in meeting us, because the alternative would be what you would call enslavement of humankind at best, which is not going to happen. The reason I say that is that we've been watched for a long period of time. They've been watching us for a very long time anyways. And it's kind of like when you're a kid and you get an ant farm, right? You're a kiddo and you get an ant farm. You sit there and you look through the viewing screen and you watch what the ants are doing, what they're building. They're building the colony. They're multiplying into a bigger colony. You get to feed them and whatnot, take care of them, and so it's pretty much no different. And there's a song by Stone Temple Pilots that's called Army Ants that I resonate with. It's kind of a fun song because it talks about people not respecting how each other pray, and we all file up in single file line like army ants, and so it kind of defines how we're essentially all the same, but for some reason we can't get along with the way that each of us behave. We're doing the same thing, like one person's praying this way, another person's praying that way, but we can't seem to reach hands out to shake our hands with each other. And so that's kind of one of the things where you'll sit there and you'll look at a lot of the ancient civilizations that didn't get along, and the conquistadors came to South America in search for gold, and they kind of raped and pillaged and ended up taking a lot from South America. And the Incans suffered dramatically from it, but it's a funny old joke that the canary bean came from the Incans, and it's called the Mayacoba. I've already said this in my channel, but the Mayacoba also sounds very much like mea culpa. And so when the conquistadors came over and saw a tribe of Incans all sitting around eating beans, farting their brains out probably, they named it the mea culpa bean, which is like saying my bad or my fault, right? So the conquistadors came over with Latin and probably named it the oops I farted bean, and it's pretty much the oldest fart joke I know of. But back to I believe it's the Atacamas. They're in the South America. There's a gentleman named Brian Forrester. He has access to human skulls. They're not really human skulls, but they're oblong shaped, kind of like in the movie Coneheads, right? You've got the movie Coneheads, like, oh, we come from France. That's where they came from, right? They came from France. You got these Coneheads and whatnot, oversized skulls and sharp teeth, right? Every one of their teeth is like a canine. So Dan Aykroyd was in that, and oh God, what's her name? God, Jane. Oh God, I want to say Jane Goodall. I don't think that's the correct name. But there's another actress. She's the wife of Dan Aykroyd, and her name's Jane. She's an awesome actor too. That was a great movie. But truth is stranger than fiction, and so Coneheads kind of shows you, that's Hollywood's giving you hints. Hollywood's giving you hints back in the day. So I suggest you go watch the movie Coneheads, and obviously they threw some things off, so you wouldn't catch all of it. But yeah, we come from France. No, the aliens did not come from France, but not those ones at least. That being said, you go look at South America. They had some royalty. I think they were Incan royalty. I don't think they were Mayan royalty, but they were Incan royalty that were buried, had very special buried skulls. Human skulls, and they had oblong heads, just the same shape and size that you would have seen in the movie Coneheads. And you could probably get away with doing something like head binding. As a baby grows, you could probably get the skull to shape that way, but you would end up with a mentally disabled person, because you would hinder the growth of their gray matter, and it would change the way that their brain would function. So that wouldn't really be an effective way. That was actually done, but it was done in a almost like paying homage or tribute to the real Coneheads. So humankind kind of wanted to mimic what they saw, because they saw genius. When you've got an extra large capacity for brain size, usually genius comes with that. You have some high intellect, high intelligence capabilities. So in our history as human beings, we've mimicked these situations and these creatures that have come and visited us. Back to the cone heads, you know, those heads were not bound. They were not bound in a way to create a cone shape. It was a natural formation. You could tell because the skull is not limited in size during the growth. But another thing is that we have plates on our skull, right? Our skull has 4 plates, and they kind of come up to the center of your forehead, where they triangulate to a specific point, because they're kind of a trip, because they're woven together. You can see the crack in the skull, where when you were a child it was cartilage, which made your skull more flexible to get out of your mom. You could actually your skull would actually flex enough to facilitate giving birth, right? So there's a lot of cartilage where those plates of the skull met, and that's why you have to be careful with a child who's under 2 years old in any type of head injury, because those parts of the skull are still very soft. So I don't know if you know that, or if you're aware of that, but that's one of the things that's very, very important to know about human children, is that they cannot take head damage like less than 2 years old, as far as their ability for their skull to protect their brain, because of that cartilage being there. It changes to bone within those couple of years, and then their head's a little bit harder. They're a little more protected. That being said, those plates all come together in a specific way, and that's universal amongst all human beings of all races. But these skulls that Brian Forrester has, the way that the atlas and the axis of the spine meet the base of the skull, and where the spinal cord comes up into the skull, is not the same place where a human would have that sit, and the location is set in a specific position to accommodate for the shape of the head. Because it's a bigger, heavier head, you have to change the way the skull sits on the spinal column. And also those sutures between the skull plates on the back of the head, there is a difference in the way that they come together entirely. It doesn't match the way that all human beings have their skulls. The plates match and come together, which is a very obvious sign that the genetics are different. It's a different genetic DNA sequence, meaning it's not human, essentially, or a different species of human altogether. Kind of like, you go Neanderthal, Cro-Magnon, kind of like similar to that. But even then, those type of evolutionary steps, you would not see something like this. You would see prominent eyebrows, like a bigger forehead, bushier eyebrows, bigger nose, bigger chin, in like Neanderthals. And as we became more intelligent, those prominent features went away. But you wouldn't see something like the change in structure of the skull or bones or anything like that to this extent. That would be kind of like intervention, where DNAs of multiple creatures were mixed together, which is something that's happened. That's something that's happened before. And human beings are still kind of in the process of coping with that, because it's kind of like the video game, what's it called, Among Us, right? And everyone's like going, everyone looks the same except for that one monster. But in reality, these creatures that sit among us, the vast majority of them are monsters. Now some you could say are, but it's no different as far as humankind goes. They're monsters also. They're hiding in among us too. But I would look into Brian Forrester and look into the pyramids of Giza and see what I said.